Hi, my name is Les Wollam. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. In 1959, when I was 16 years old, my schoolteacher father took a job teaching U.S. Air Force dependents on a U.S. Air Force base located near Seville, Spain. My parents and I and three siblings moved to Seville, Spain, where we lived for 2 years. I got interested in photography while in Seville, and because of my time in Spain, I became a professional photographer for 50 years. I have been back to Spain 4 times since living there: 1972, 1989, 1995, and April and May of 2024. My wife and I, Charlotte and I, have been together for 14 years, and this was her first trip to Spain. We moved to Berry Creek in Georgetown in January of 2015. This basic map of Spain shows our route on this trip. We went to Madrid for 3 days, Toledo, Cordoba, Granada, and Arcos for 2 days each. We ended up in Sevilla, where we spent 4 days. The other stops on the map were just to look for part of a day. On our return from Spain, we took the train from Sevilla to Madrid, spent one night near the airport, and flew back to the USA. We arrived in Madrid at the Barajas Airport in Terminal Number 4, a very large modern terminal built in 2006. We then took the subway into the center of the city to our hotel. We took the hop-on, hop-off bus to get overviews. The best views are from the top of the bus. Here you can see the street where our hotel was, which was a pedestrian-only street. And here's one of the views from the top of the bus. You get a good view down on people. This is the agricultural ministry, which had a lot of flourishes around it. They seem to do that a lot in Spain with a lot of interesting buildings. This is the Cibele Palace, which was a main post office, but now is City Hall. This is the Almudena Cathedral. We didn't go to it, but it looks like quite a nice building. This is Big Head, an art piece called Julia by artist Manuel Plensa, and it's titled Tenderness and Silence. Works are chosen by the people. I guess they vote for them or something for exhibit. Interestingly enough, at the Meadows Museum, which is at SMU in Dallas, they have a large, nearly as big as that, wire sculpture by the same artist. We love art and art museums, so we went to the Prado first. It was built by Charles III in 1785. It is one of the great museums in the world. It holds mostly traditional art. No photography allowed, but of course I learned how to use my cell phone hanging from my neck with a remote control for it, so I take a few pictures. Here's a statue of Goya, one of the great Spanish artists. This is a Hieronymus Bosch painting titled The Garden of Earthly Delights. Shows a bewildering perspective of sinful humanity when free of moral restraint. That's the center panel. The two side panels, the one on the left shows heaven, and the one on the right shows hell. Pretty interesting. This is a Goya painting of Spain's resistance to Napoleon armies during the occupation of 1808. First time I saw it, I thought for sure it was from the Spanish Civil War, because it reminds me of that. This is one of the most famous paintings in the Prado. It's called Las Meninas, the Maids of Honor, by Diego Velázquez. Here you can see, if you look over to the left in the painting, you can see the artist standing back there. He's painted himself into the painting, doing the painting. Anyway, it's interesting. It has the crown princess, a dwarf, a dog, and all sorts of characters in the picture. We went by the outside of the Prado on a number of times, and one afternoon we saw all these people lined up. So I asked somebody, and they said that the Prado is which normally charges to get into, in the afternoon around 4 o'clock they open it for free, and so a lot of people line up to see it then. This is the Modern Art Museum, the Reina Sofia, Queen Sophie, She is the wife of Juan Carlos, who succeeded Franco. It is not very far from the Prado and was completed in 1992. And photography is allowed, which is nice. This is a really, really famous Picasso painting. It was done, he was asked to do it for a pavilion at the Paris International Exposition in 1937. It's called Guernica. Guernica was a small town in Spain, and during the Spanish Civil War, it was bombed almost to the ground by Hitler's German bombers, which were practicing for World War II, and it was ordered by Franco. Picasso wanted to give it to the Spanish government, but he would not give it to the Spanish government until Franco had died. So after he died, it came here. I saw it many times when I lived in New York City in the 70s, because it was at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. But you can see from the perspective here how large it is. Anyway, it's quite a famous painting. Here are a couple of more Picassos that were at the museum. This is a Salvador Dali, one of the great Spanish artists. You can see he always does something a little bit unusual, but it certainly is him. Spain. This is, we're walking along, this is on the Calle de Alcalá, and it's called the Chariots Building, and I don't know what the reason for them, but there are a lot of buildings have beautiful sculpture and art on top of them, and this is actually a governmental building, but it was really beautiful to see. One of the things that we really loved, and I always loved about Spain anyway, is that Spanish people love to be out amongst each other, and this is in the evening, and it's probably 10 or 11, and people out everywhere, and it was lovely. It was April, beautiful time of year, and warm and so on. People everywhere just enjoying themselves, and this was near our hotel, but beautiful. And another part nearby, you can see, if you look kind of on the left in the background, you can see a McDonald's back there, but they always seem to be enjoying themselves, having something to eat, and staying out late every night. This is the Royal Palace of Madrid, and it is actually the official residence of the Spanish royal family, but they don't live there now. It's usually only used for state ceremonies. This palace is really something. It has 135,000 square meters, not feet, square meters of floor space, and contains 3,418 rooms. It is the largest royal palace in Europe. Anyway, it is really something to see, and nicely they did allow photography in there. But what we saw, obviously we didn't see all 3,400 rooms, but we saw some beautiful, this is near the entranceway, but some of the rooms were just over the top in decoration, and beautiful ceilings and paintings and art, and just this is the banquet hall, which is still used for big ceremonial things and so on, and really something. And this one with the chairs on the right is actually where the king and queen meet dignitaries and things like that, and it's still used on a somewhat of a regular basis. But this is the Plaza Mayor. It's a major public space in the heart of Madrid, and it was once the center of old Madrid. It was first built during the reign of Philip III, but it's a wonderful square, and there's always something going on there, and so on. And so we got somebody to take our picture here, and you see some more places, and all sorts of places, food courts and restaurants and things. It's just, and day or night, it's just crowded with people. So this is another one nearby, and it's in the called the Puerta del Sol. And it's a public square with a horse statue of King Carlos III. In the back, you can see a sign that says Tío Pepe. Tío in Spanish means uncle, so Uncle Pepe. And that's the name of a really famous sherry wine in Spain. And the sign itself is quite famous because it's been there since 1936 and has a kind of an importance on its own. But this is El Retiro, which means the retreat park, which is a large, beautiful park in the center of Madrid. It has a nice lagoon and boating, and it's really just an absolutely beautiful park. And you can rent a boat there and ride around in the lagoon and stuff like that. But I put this picture in because in 1961, my father and I took a trip, just the two of us, all over Europe, and then we shipped our car back to the U.S. from Germany, and then took a train back to Seville, where we were still living, because we were going to be leaving pretty soon, and so we were going to pick up our car in New York and drive it across the U.S. to Oregon. But anyway, we were exhausted from riding the trains, which were very crowded, and so we went to this El Retiro Park, and there's a big fence around it that has a place you can sit. And so, of course, I was 18. My father was probably an old man of 43, and so he sat down, and I went to walk off, look around for a little bit, and I came back after probably 20 or 30 minutes, and I saw this crowd of people gathered, and I walked through the crowd, and here was my father with his head laid back, snoring loudly, and all the people who were out for the evening paseo, the walk, were just laughing and pointing at him, and I thought that was a good picture of the classic American tourist. Anyway, here we are on to Toledo, which is, as you can see from the map, is not a very big distance from Madrid, and in fact is less than an hour drive. So we picked up a car after our time in Madrid as we were leaving, and drove on to Toledo. But Toledo is a really, really famous city, and it was the capital of all of Spain until 1560, and it's really something. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful town, and part of it is walled, and and they did that in those days to keep from bandits and things like that. And this is some of the wall that is still there. But it is also surrounded on three sides by a river going around it, so it was really well isolated. But we again did the hop on, hop off bus, and we got up there, and boy, I tell you, you couldn't have asked for better clouds. It was just a gorgeous day, and so I got this nice cloudy picture of the day. And we were back on a different day, and we got some clouds, not as good as the earlier ones, but got somebody to take a picture of us up there. So, and this is a little bit of a close-up showing some of the city, and at the very top of the city you see a building they call the Alcazar, and Alcazar is just a Moorish word that means either fortress or palace, and in this case it's a fortress because that was the famous fortress in Toledo. This is a former synagogue that had some beautiful architecture in it. It's been completely restored, and it's no longer used as a synagogue. It uses a museum and other things, but the architecture in there is just absolutely beautiful. Toledo is a city of steel. It is famous for its steel, Toledo steel, and of course, in earlier times it was used in swords and things, and it was famous all over the world. And anyway, they also use they also do a lot of inlaid metal, and you'll see a lot of things like this that they sell to tourists and things, but beautiful inlaid metal and stuff like that, so really something. But then we went to this church, the Church of Santo Tomé, which is kind of a small church, but it has this famous painting in there called The Burial of Count Orgaz by El Greco, and it's 40 feet high, so it's absolutely huge, but people just line up to get in to see it, and most people don't even look at the church, so I took a picture of the inside of the church. Like I said, it's a small church, but quite nice, but that painting is really something. Then we went to the Cathedral of Toledo, and it's one of the three 13th century high Gothic cathedrals in Spain, and is considered, in the opinion of some authorities, to be the magnum opus, the best of the Gothic style in Spain. Anyway, it was began in 1226 under the rule of Ferdinand. Anyway, it's a beautiful church inside. I mean, just beautifully appointed, and the ceiling and the artwork and everything is just really amazing. But the most incredible thing about it is this feature is this Baroque. Here it's the cathedral is Gothic, but this part of the inside was Baroque altarpiece called El Transparente, and that because there's a hole in the roof there to let God look down on His people, but it's really just absolutely ornate. And this is the one place that you need a telephoto lens to be able to see what's up at the top there, and so you can see what it's like up there. And there's even a mural painted in the ceiling of the opening there. So just really beautiful. This is a statue of Cervantes. He's the one who wrote Don Quixote, probably the most famous book ever from Spain. But he's quite a character and well thought of. And there you see statues and things about him and writings by him all over Spain. So we enjoyed our eating and things there, but sometimes you didn't know exactly what you're eating. They eat a lot of what we call tapas, T-A-P-A-S, which just means little plates of things. So you can get little plates, so you could get a whole bunch of different things. And here we just ordered a sampler of tapas, so you didn't know exactly what you were getting, but it was always good and stuff. So we really enjoyed that. But from Toledo, we went to a little town called Consugra, which you can see, which is the next stop there. Consugra is not that big of a city, but that's where it's in this area called La Mancha. You see the name there, and Don Quixote was the man of La Mancha. So we went there just specifically to see the windmills, and here are the famous windmills from Don Quixote. And I had never been to this before, so it was exciting to see part of a castle there and stuff, but really interesting. They don't use them anymore, but they're still there, and really something to see. This is inside one, looking back out at the other ones, and this is what it looks inside. And when they were working, they ground grain and stuff into flour, so that's a big stone, and this is actually one of the stones from when they were working. Then we were on to Cordoba, and one of the problems of renting a car and driving in Spain is it's great out in the open road, but when you get to the cities, they're really too crowded to drive in. So we had to find a parking garage. So we were very careful some of the parking garages were huge, to mark carefully where our car was, and this was our actual car, and make sure we knew the license plate and the model and the location. And then when we came out, we also took a picture of where we went into the thing, because this one was several layers under the street, so because you had to be able to find your car afterwards. But Cordoba is a city in southern region of Andalusia. Andalusia is the whole southern part of Spain, and the capital of the province of Cordoba. It was an important Roman city and a major Islamic center in the Middle Ages. It is best known for La Mezquita, an immense mosque dating from 784 AD. One of the things that's so important about it is that after the Catholics retook the country from the Moors, they didn't tear it down. Most places they tore down the mosque and built a cathedral there. In this case, they left the mosque, which is the largest mosque in the world, and they built a cathedral in the middle of it. So you could actually go there and never even see the cathedral, but of course if you walk in there far enough, you'll stumble onto it. But it's really something. It was just a lovely town, and it was let's see, it's also called the Great Mosque. But Cordoba's period of greatest glory began in the 8th century after the Moorish conquest, when some 300 mosques and innumerable palaces and public buildings were built to rival the splendors of Constantinople, Damascus, and Baghdad. Back in 935, Cordoba was considered to be the world's largest city with over 1 million population, which is about 325,000 today. Throughout the history, this town was one of the rare spots of peaceful coexistence of 3 different cultures: Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Cordoba is also the birthplace of the great Roman philosopher Seneca. The Roman walls of Cordoba are ancient defensive walls, which you can still see. But this is what people go there for, is this mosque. It is really something. And these are double mosques here, arches. And from what I've read, the technology was only good enough to do it this high, so they built another one on top of it to get the roof even higher. But it is really, really something. It is just an amazing space. And it's really something to see. And wandering through here, you can see they've got a Catholic cross in there, which wouldn't be there if it was just a mosque today. But you can see the beautiful work that was inside of it, though. Incredible ceilings and artwork. And then smack in the middle of it, sure enough, is this Catholic church. And I'll have to say it is a beautiful church also, and so on. But this is the exterior of it, and like I said, the place is huge. And these big doors here, when it was just was operating as a mosque, they kept them open most of the time, so people could come and go, and they were gathering places for people, and also to come and pray and do all sorts of things like that. So. But it's a beautiful city, and we really enjoyed walking around there and stuff. And you can see there's a cross on the wall because there was some Catholic festival going on. This picture I put in just because these people are waiting for this restaurant to open. I had almost forgotten about eating in Spain, is that the nice restaurants stay open for lunch until about 3 or 4, and then they close until about 9 or 10 in the evening. And so you've got to wait for them to open, and which, if you're traveling around and getting up early to see things, it's kind of late to be staying up. But all these people are in line here waiting for this thing to open at 8 or 9, I guess. Quite really something. This is one of my, I always say that all photography is good framing, and I got this picture in Cordoba of this woman walking along, and I liked how she was well framed. Anyway, here's part of the Roman wall left from when the Romans controlled the city, and here you can see more of it on the outskirts a little bit, so really something. But from Cordoba, we're going to go pretty much east to the city of Granada. And Granada is an ancient city, and it was also the place where the last Moors were gathered. They controlled the area from Granada all the way down to the coast here and stuff like that for many years. And then Ferdinand and Isabella drove them from the country, the last Moors from the country in the year 1492. Do you remember something else happened in 1492? Columbus sailed the blue. So the same year that Columbus discovered America for Spain, the last Moors were driven from Granada in 1492. So that's where we're headed. And we're headed there to see the Alhambra, a famous palace. But we had a really nice room there, and hotel room, and it was really close to some nice restaurants. And so these are tapas type things and so on. We really enjoyed this restaurant, ate there more than once. But this is a building in Granada that is near the cathedral but is not inside of it, and it was built just as a tomb for Ferdinand and Isabella, the ones who I just said were the ones who drove the last Moors from Spain in 1492. And so, again, no photography, so I'm shooting from the hip, but I got some pictures. And here's the carving of them. And most monarchs from Spain are buried in El Escorial up near Madrid, but they chose to be buried here because they felt that this was the most important thing they did, was to drive the last Moors from Spain. And then you go down some stairs, and underneath are the actual crypts from the 1500s of their bodies, one of these being Ferdinand and one being Isabella, and then some other members of the family back in here. So those are lead-lined caskets from the 1500s. I didn't take many pictures of close-ups of Spaniards or things when we were out and about, but we were in this cafe having a bite one day, and I saw this young married couple sitting next to us, and I'm sure the wife is telling the husband what all he's done wrong lately, but it's interesting. But the big thing you go to Granada for is to see the famous palace that the Moors had up until they were driven out in, like I said, in 1492. And this is called the Alhambra, and I'm sure we live near a street called Alhambra and drive on it all the time right here in our little town of Georgetown. But it's a beautiful, the first place you go when you go to the Alhambra is to the gardens of it, which are called the Generalife. And it happened to be raining the day that we went, but it was still absolutely lovely. And I think that the rain and the feeling of it made it even nicer than it was before. But it's really, really sumptuous. In the background here, you can see the Alhambra across the way, the Alhambra Palace. But the landscaping in the Generalife is just spectacular, and the gardens and things. Here you can see some tourists with umbrellas, and we had our umbrellas too. But it was just so sensual with the rain on these beautiful flowers and things. And there was even some nice buildings there, not quite as formidable as the actual Alhambra. All right, now we've gone across and we're in the Alhambra, and it is a palace and fortress complex, and one of the most famous monuments of Islamic architecture, and one of the best preserved palaces of the historic Islamic world, in addition to containing notable examples of Spanish Renaissance architecture. Anyway, but really, really something. And I'll just go through here these fairly quickly, but it's absolutely beautiful inside. Just the carvings and the shapes and things, and the beautiful art and so on. This is called the Patio of the Lions, the Court of the Lions, and it's really something here with you can see the court there. You can see it right there, and I think I have a better picture here. But beautiful, beautiful artwork. And here you can see a little bit better picture of the Court of the Lions, but really something. Anyway, it's just really over-the-top architecture and beautiful thing. Anyway, from here, from Granada, we went southwest down to the coast to Gibraltar. Gibraltar is a British overseas territory and headland on Spain's south coast. It's dominated by the Rock of Gibraltar, a 426 meter high limestone ridge, first occupied by the Moors in the Middle Ages and later ruled by Spain. The outpost was ceded to the British in 1713, and I think the Spanish have been unhappy about that ever since. But anyway, we wanted to see that, and I wanted Charlotte to see it, so we went there, and we got a hotel room on the Spanish side, and then came across, just took a taxi into Gibraltar, and spent an afternoon there looking at things, and here's what it looks like. That's a picture I did not take, but the big thing there is to take the cable car to the top, which gives you a good overview, and so we did that. And several hours in line to get up there. There were a lot of people there, but it was worth it. And here you can see down, and that's all part of Gibraltar. And again, it's very English. It is a British colony, and which pisses the Spanish off, but that's what it is. And we even have a bar at the top where we got a drink. And this, to me, is the best picture taken of us by someone else on the trip. You hand your cell phone to somebody, hoping they won't run away with it, and this guy really took his time and did a good job. And I think he realized you could take a lot of pictures and you wouldn't run out of film because it's digital. So anyway, and this is coming down, you can see it across. But Gibraltar's a lovely little town, and a lot of nice things there, and a lot of shops and things, and beautiful gardens and things. And we stayed one night near there on the Spanish side, and then the next day we went to Ronda, which you can see is just due north of there. Okay, and this is Ronda, and Ronda is a mountaintop city in Spain's Malaga province that's set dramatically above a deep gorge. This gorge, called El Tajo, separates the city's 15th century new town from its old town, dating to Moorish rule. And Puente Nuevo, a stone bridge spanning the gorge, that's the name of the bridge, has a lookout offering views. Anyway, and I didn't take this picture. This is an aerial I got somewhere, but you can see before they had that bridge, there were two separate towns, obviously much smaller then, but you couldn't get over there very easily because this gorge is so deep. So really something. But and we didn't stay in Ronda. We just spent an afternoon there and wandered around. And this is a park in town where you can kind of see off the edge, and it is really steep, so really something. But a beautiful view down. And here you can see how high the cliffs are and stuff like that. A lot of cities were built up in the hills because it protected them from bandits and things. And here's the same bridge from a close-up view from in town there, so you can see what it looks like. From there, we went due west from Ronda to a town called Arcos de la Frontera. It just means Arcos of the frontier. And it is a small town that I discovered I had never been there until 1989 on a similar trip. And the travel guru, Rick Steves, had told about it. And it is a lovely small town. And it's like Ronda, though. It's high up in the mountains. But it's not nearly so crowded. And so we went there and we were able to spend a couple of days. And we stayed in the same hotel that I'd stayed in 1989 called El Convento, meaning it had formerly been a convent that had been turned into a hotel. The cross here is not normally out here. That was just there for because they're having a religious festival right now. So it's really beautiful inside. When I was there in '89, they had a full restaurant in there, but they don't have that anymore. They just have this breakfast area, but really nice. This is our room looking out over the valley. It just hangs on the side of the cliff. I mean, it's really something, but absolutely beautiful. This is a picture I took in when I was there in 1989, and I was a full-time working photographer at the time, and so they still had a restaurant in the El Convento then, and so I said, well, let me do a nice picture. So I did this like it was an assignment, and I took one of the tables from the restaurant outside and had them bring out food and set it all up, and just like I would do for many of the hundreds and hundreds of magazines I've shot for. And I got the couple who founded it to come out and be in the picture. And they put out some of the local food that they used in their restaurant. Excuse me, but they also put out a lot of wines that they served in their restaurant, which were mostly from that region, and so on. But anyway, I looked up this picture before we took this trip, and I made a print of it because I'd never sent it to them or anything, and so I made a print and I brought it along, and I asked the woman at the desk, who spoke quite good English, if the couple still owned the hotel, and she said, "Oh yes, but they're retired, and so but they come around once in a while." So anyway, so when the woman came around, in the picture, I gave her the picture, and she almost wept. She just was, and she starts going off in staccato Spanish, and I'm trying to follow her, and finally I pick up from what she's saying that her husband had died the year before, and so it was very emotional to her. So I was so pleased that I had done that and had taken it to her. So it was kind of a nice thing. But here are some kids. We spent 2 days there and didn't have to do too much running around. Here's some people taking part in this religious festival, whatever it was, and they always all dressed up and so on. But we just relaxed a little bit. It was really nice because before we were just seeming to run from place to place. So this is a view out our back there, and you can see the hot air balloon. And I'm sure if we looked around enough, we could have found a place where we could have taken a ride in one, but we didn't have the time, so we just didn't do it. But it was made for a nice picture. This is again from our balcony, and you can see the tile map of the view from there, which is really nice. So. And you can see why I didn't want to drive in these towns. This is actually a road going down here. we parked in a parking garage quite a ways out of town here. So anyway, crazy. One of the things I always loved about the Spanish is they really, really take care of their children. Even if they're poor, their children are always well dressed and stuff. I'm sure this family wasn't poor, but it was nice to see. This hotel, like I said, Rick Steves pretty much promoted it, and so he promoted it so much, I'm sure that he's the one who put it on the map. So they have a room there named for him, which I think is pretty cool. If you've never used Rick Steves for traveling, you ought to look him up, because he has tons of videos on PBS. Here's a hotel. I think it's called a Parador, and it's owned by the Spanish government, and they have really nice hotels in different cities. We didn't stay in one because we're staying in the El Convento, but we went here for dinner one night, and they had a really nice restaurant there, and we stayed up till 8:30, I think, to get in there, but really lovely. And this is the small cathedral there, really nice. But one of the things this is, again, this may have been a weekend, I don't know, but this is 10 or 11 o'clock, and all these people are out, and they're out on the street just seeing each other. And these weren't tourists; these are the people who live there. I mean, I'm sure some of them were tourists, but they're just enjoying each other. To me, Spain is one big family. So, and this is the view in the evening from our balcony. All right, from here, we are going to go to Sevilla. Now, Sevilla is where I lived from 1959 to 1961 with my parents, and where I got interested in photography. So it has a lot of meaning to me. And in English, you say Seville, but in Spanish, you say Sevilla, and Sevilla sounds so much nicer than Seville. So anyway, but one of the things I wanted to do is try and find the housing area. A housing area the base was just set up in the 50s under a big deal with Franco, and it was an Air Force base, and there were 3 Air Force bases and 1 Navy base, all American, in Spain at the time. Now the only base that's left is the Navy base, which is Rota, which is down on the coast. Anyway, this is at Seville in the housing area, but the base itself was actually about 30 miles out of town. But the housing area was built just for the Americans, so it was only Americans who lived there, and that's part of the reason I don't speak Spanish so well. But it didn't have these big fences around it like this. So anyway, this map of it was done a year after we lived there, and it's really quite nice because it's still there. But it's really hard to find this place, because when we lived there, it was 3 miles out of the city. Now it's the town has grown out to it and covered it up, and so on. So this is what we lived in. This was all Americans in here, okay, called the Garden City of Santa Clara. And here you can see in the red circle was our house, which was toward the front. And so we're going to find our house, the house that we had lived in from 59 to 61. Along the way, you see most of the places have walls in front of them, and some of them have torn down the houses and built much fancier houses where the other ones were, and something like that. But this is exactly what our house looked like when we lived there from 59 to 61, okay? They were all duplexes, and they had a wall in between. Each side had a up and down, and then a wall in between, and then the other side had an up and down. And there was not a garage, but a carport on either end for each family. But we didn't have the fences in front like they do now. So while I was taking pictures and stuff, a woman asked me what I was doing, and so I'm explaining to her in my poor Spanish, 60 años pasado, yo vivo aquí, I lived here 60 years ago in that house. And anyway, a guy came up on a motor scooter who lived across the street, and so she waved him down, and he came over and started. And so I'm trying to talk to him, and he finally looks at me and says, I speak English. And so I had a really nice conversation with him. But this house is the actual house that we lived in, except in the other, that this is the facing it, this is the right half, and we lived in the left half, okay? But I got him to open the door and let me photograph inside. This is exactly what it looked like when we lived there, except I think that these were round poles rather than square ones here, but I'm sure that it's exactly the same house as we had. Now, we didn't have the bougainvillea, and he's got an enclosed garage there, which we didn't have. So that, anyway, it was really nice to see. So this was us in my family of us siblings in 1959, and we were all put on the same passport. Okay, and in the picture on the right here is my older sister Linda, who was 18 at the time, and then I'm 16 at this time, and my brother here is, let's see, he was 4 years younger, so he would have been 12, and my younger sister here, who was 8 years younger, was 8. So we were kind of a well spread out family. But anyway, they would put us all in that one picture. This is the first studio picture we'd ever had taken as a family, and my father knew the photographer, and I was so mad at him. I said, how come we never had this picture? He didn't charge us anything. How come we never had any studio pictures taken before? Well, I never thought of it. His friend had a studio. Anyway, so that was us, and we're all on the same passport. This hotel is the only one that we stayed at on this trip that had any significance to us. It's called the Albanico, and it's a very charming hotel, and it's right in the center of Sevilla. And some friends from my high school days in Spain came to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary here in March of 2020. And guess what happened in March of 2020? A little thing called the pandemic. So this hotel closed, even though they weren't done with their stay. The government closed all the hotels. And so fortunately they had a friend there in Sevilla who helped them find an apartment, and they had to stay for over a month in this apartment, and the furthest they could go was 1 block to a grocery store and back, and otherwise not leave the apartment. So that was their trip, which was for their 50th birthday. So we stayed in this hotel partially to honor them, but it's also, we'd seen pictures of it. It was a very lovely place. Anyway, right close to the center of town, but beautifully oriented. So, and we really enjoyed ourselves out, having drinks and sitting around and enjoying the city. And here's a street flamenco dancer who does a little number and then passes her hat. So this is the bell tower for the cathedral, and it is quite an imposing thing. It is one of the most important things in the skyline of Sevilla, and it's really an amazing thing. And what's really amazing about it also is the fact that this bell tower is actually a Moorish minaret that was left from when there was a mosque here, which they tore down to build the cathedral. And part way up, you can see just below where the bells are there, that was all up. It was just up to that point. And a minaret is, in the Moorish world, is where the Muslims call to prayer 5 times a day, and there's actually a ramp you can ride. You could ride a horse up to the top. Obviously, it's just below where the bells are, but it's really pretty interesting. But on this next slide, I'll do a little bit closer up view. But here you can see a little bit closer up. You see where the bells are, and just below that, you can see the Moorish things. But like I said, when they tore down the mosque, they loved the tower so much that they kept it and added the bells and things to the top of it. So here, this is cathedral has a minaret attached to it. It's quite a unique story. At the very top there, you can see that's actually a weather vane that turns in the direction of the wind, and it is called La Haralta, which means the weather vane, and that is the name of the entire tower. Now they call it La Haralta, but it's quite a cool thing to see, and one of the most important things in Sevilla, especially to photograph. Here you can see the more of the cathedral and how the bell tower is into it, and I must say I have never seen it this clean. They must have cleaned it a few years ago, because it is absolutely beautiful right now. It used to be fairly dark from years of grime on it, but it's really beautiful. But it's such an important thing, and you can see the square here and everything, and it is the third largest cathedral in the world after St. Paul's, St. Paul's is second in London, and number one, of course, is St. Peter's in Italy. But it's really such a beautiful thing, and that tower is so imposing. Like I said, was formerly a minaret, but really a beautiful, beautiful cathedral. So I have taken many, many pictures of it over the years, but I was so glad to see it looking so good, and also having such good weather here. But here's another view of it. There's a statue of John Paul, the well-known Pope, who had spoken there once, and you can't get a picture where you can see the front of him and the tower, but it's a really, really beautiful building. And I'll have to say, I think it had just been cleaned, because I don't ever remember it looking that pristine before. So it's really, really beautiful. Actually got somebody to take a picture of us in front of the cathedral, which was a pretty day and stuff. I actually cleaned out a few people in the background with Photoshop. One of the things that I should mention is that you can actually climb to the top. We didn't do it, but you can climb to the top. It is not stairs, it is a ramp, because when it was a minaret, the man rode a horse up there every 5 times a day to call Muslims to prayer. But they left the ramp so you can walk, so it makes it a little bit easier. But it also gives you a very, very nice overview of the city. I didn't go up there on this trip, but I've been up there other times, so it's a very good overview of the city from up near where the bells are. You don't want to be there when they ring the bells, however. I did that once. Here's a replica of what's at the top of the cathedral, called La Haralta, meaning weather vane. But and like I said, it turns in the direction of the wind. So this is the court of the oranges, and they weren't ripe yet then. But this was also used when this was a mosque, and the Moors have a lot of cleanliness involved in their religion, so they would wash themselves in the pools that were near the orange trees. So here you can see some oranges that were ripening, because there's a lot. Oranges in Seville are not eating oranges. They are really, really bitter. They send them, most of them are sent to England to be used in that orange marmalade. So this building here is where famous painter Murillo lived and did his work in this building. And the bars are something. I always love the bars have these hams hanging here, and I guess they're good for years just hanging there. And anyway, they get one down every now and then and slice it up. They love their jamón. Anyway, again, we had some lovely meals there. Anyway, then we toured the cathedral, and it is really, really something. It is just massive inside. When we lived there, of course, there were no lines. There were no fees to get in. You could just wander in and out. On a hot summer day, it'd be great to walk in because it was so cool, because it was so massive inside. But really, really beautiful, and just really enjoyed seeing it again. And this is one of the things I remember, which is scenes from Christ's life. And here's a close-up of it where you can see some pictures, some of the ways things are described in there. This is really interesting. This is purportedly the tomb of Christopher Columbus. And of course, several other places claim his tomb, but recently I saw on the news that they actually did some DNA testing, and it turns out that at least some of his body is in this tomb, so that's really something. But it's really beautiful, and this is in the cathedral, but really something. You can even see it from up from underneath there. Beautifully appointed, these different parts of it, so you could just spend days in here really looking at things. Then we went to the Alcazar. Remember, I said the Alcazar meant palace or fortress, and in this case it's palace. And this is just literally a few feet from the cathedral, and it was it was constructed on the foundation of a former Muslim fortress for Spanish King Peter of Castile. It's the blends of Christian influence and Muslim features in this palace and gardens can still be seen. The place is filled with beautiful tile work. Some of you, especially in the garden, you might recognize some scenes from the Game of Thrones were filmed there, mostly in the gardens. But again, you know, you get to wait in a line to go in and so on. But it's really, really something. So beautiful. And a lot of it is very much like the Alhambra, very Moorish and so on. Beautiful ceilings and artwork and things. And this is the garden, like I said, where some of the Game of Thrones things were filmed, and again, beautifully done. I put this picture in because this is a picture I took in 1995. I was in Sevilla for a while by myself and some time on my hands, and so I want to do a different sort of picture of the Sevilla Tower, the Giralta. So I took a picture at night of the tower on film, remember film from the old days? And I shot the entire roll of the tower. And then I rewound it, and I was able to align it by having drawn a box in the first frame. Excuse me. And so I then re-exposed it during the day over different things. And one of the places I re-exposed it over was during the day was in the the Alcazar, and this is the result. I got one frame that worked, and I tried to find a place where it was a black background so it wouldn't overexpose what I had already exposed. So this is a double exposure. This is something you could do easily today in Photoshop, but this has a different look being a double exposure, and I think it's one of the most interesting pictures I've ever seen of that tower. This is the Plaza de España, and it's right on the edge of it. It was built in 1928. It's really a beautiful place, and this is a woman I saw standing on the edge of it there. But anyway, just a gorgeous place. More of the Plaza de España, which was built in 1928 for the Ibero-American Exposition. It's a half circle, so it's really quite large, and it's absolutely beautiful. There's a lagoon there where you can rent a boat and paddle around and stuff like that. For some of you who may have seen there was a gentleman who came and talked about Lawrence of Arabia in Georgetown earlier this year, and this is where some scenes from it were filmed at the Plaza de España, especially the ones where he's with the army. A classmate of mine from high school, this was actually filmed just after we left in 61 and 62. A friend of mine got a job working on the crew, and so got to be there for a lot of the filming of the movie. Really a lifetime opportunity. Another view of the plaza, a little bit closer up. You can see some of the boats you can rent. I think we did that several times when we lived there, just to ride around there. It was very inexpensive, at least at the time, so it gives you a good overview. But lovely, lovely place. One of the things I loved about Spain is the bread. I mean, I grew up on Wonder Bread, and I had never really tasted bread until we got to Spain, but their breads are beautiful. There's a walking street in Sevilla called the Calle de Sierpes, the Street of the Serpent, and it's winding, and it's just a walking street, no cars allowed, but it's really a lot of shops and things along it. Used to love to go there and see things. Here's a copy of the Giralta. I put this picture in because this is from Semana Santa, the Holy Week, which is the week of Easter, and week before Easter, and they carry all these things through the streets they take out of the churches, and penitente, people who are paying penance to the church for something from that year, dress up in these outfits that represent a specific church, and this is a church that uses obviously yellow and red, but there are some that use completely white, and this is where the Ku Klux Klan got their outfits from. There's even a museum somewhere near here that has a picture of that, but they came from Seville, Spain, so a little piece of trivia there. This is a place called las setas, which means mushrooms, and it was a part of Sevilla that wasn't doing so well. So in order to make it more of a tourist spot, they built this, and I don't remember what year it was built, but not so long ago. But it really added to the place, and it's really something. And of course, you can get your picture taken up here with the Sevilla sign. But and again, when you hand your phone to somebody, make sure they don't get their thumb in it like this guy did for our picture here. Anyway, but that was something. And this was one of the last places that we went. This is called Basilica de la Macarena. It's a church with the Virgin of Sevilla, the Madonna statue. It's one of the most famous Madonnas in Sevilla, and it's fancy robes on it and all sorts of things. And during the Semana Santa, they put it up on a big thing and carry it through the streets with a bunch of other paseos also. And we stayed up for one of our last meals there. We went to one where you had to stay up till 8 or 9 to get in, but it was really, really lovely. And we ordered a fish that was big enough we could share, and she showed us the fish after it was done cooked, and then she took it away and took all the meat off for us and put it there. So it was really, really a nice fish there. Then we, of course, had some. Anyway, that is most of our trip there, but I wanted you to see this. One of the things we did not go for is the Feria de Abril, which is the April Fair, which is really something. And when we lived there, I've been back for it twice, but there's a part of Sevilla that there's nothing on the rest of the year. And for 1 week, it's about 2 weeks after Easter, they have this fair, and they set up all these. You can see the tents in the background, and they're called casetas, which means little house. And they set up over 1,000 of them, and people rent them to have their families' entertainment in there and stuff. And people just get dressed up, and these are ordinary people. These are not flamenco dancers. These are ordinary people doing flamenco on the streets and stuff like that. It is just really something. I think that's some of what spurred me on in photography, because of all the things you could see. But here you see the girls in these big outfits, and they sit behind the man on horseback and put their arm around his waist, and they basically sit on the rump of the horse with their legs to one side. But really, really beautiful. And you can see the lights and things that are on all night long. It goes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's really, really fascinating. And this is one of the casetas. When I went in '89, there was a woman that I knew slightly who had married a Spaniard and stayed, and she and her family had gone together with 26 other families to rent one of these places. And you have to know somebody to get into them. You can't just walk into one, even though you could see into them from the street. But I asked her at one point what would be the best time to see them dance, and she said, well, she and her friends, and she said, well, come back about between 4 and 6 a.m. So we went back and got some sleep, and then came back between 4 and 6 and saw them dance. But they just go all night. It's really, really a wild time. But The other thing you have to realize, though, if you go there at that week, you better get reservations a couple of years in advance and be prepared to spend twice or three times what the normal price for a hotel room is. So anyway, the end of the show, and we had a absolutely lovely time. And this is us leaving our hotel. So end of show.